Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this video, Is It Always True? By the Imperator of AMORC. An article taken from Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 16, Number 12, January 1939. The Thought of the Month, Is It Always True? By the Imperator of AMORC. Some years ago, I wrote an article for one of our magazines, or perhaps it was an editorial discussion, in which I presented the idea that, on the basis of the argument, if you see it in print, it must be true. There should be thousands or millions of persons in the United States and throughout the world who believe that there is a giant living up at the top of some types of beanstalks, and there are mystical worlds in which there are fairies living, and so forth, because such stories have certainly been put into print and have been read in black and white by millions of persons. Here in America, there appears to be many thousands or millions of persons who believe that if they read something in a popular or standard magazine or well-established newspaper, it must be true. It never occurs to the individuals apparently that a newspaper or magazine is no better than the human minds back of it. And since all human minds, including our own dear sweet selves, can make human errors, and since all of us represent a portion of that unknown element that is called the human equation, we should remember that all positive statements presented in black and white should be taken with some salt. Some with a grain of salt and some with a large bowlful. Certainly we do not want any of our members or students to believe that just because we venture to put many positive, definite statements into black and white in our magazine, the monographs and everywhere else, and sign our names to them, such statements are representative of the infallibility of some superhuman mind. The Christian Bible and all of the oldest scriptural writings and manuscripts are filled with human errors, since they are human products. And as I have just said, the AMORC organization is made up of human minds and human beings and human elements, in which human errors may be reduced to a minimum, but in which some error is sure to appear. Now all of this is apropos of the attitude of a certain magazine published here in America, known as Life. This weekly magazine started out with an adequate circulation and honest and sincere ambitions. It has grown today to be one of the largest in circulation and one of the largest in size in America. Its influence, for good or bad, is unquestionable because of its wide circulation, its attractiveness, and its occasional burst of absolute sincerity and honesty. But it has definitely assumed an attitude of infallibility. Its entire editorial staff and all of those associated with it as reporters and investigators make their statements and report their findings and transcribe their notions and publish their information with a very definite flair or form of expression that says to the world, what we say, what we think is absolutely pure, honest, errorless, supremely perfect, marvelous, accurate, and the utmost of human expression in the field of integrity and super opinions. It even takes its acknowledged errors flippantly. And when it does find itself in a position in its letter column to apologize for a gross error it has made, it makes its apology with an attitude of condescension, as though it were a victory for it in bowing down an admission that, after all, it is only human, and can be and often is misled in its opinions and often very definitely biased and prejudiced. This magazine and its companion known as Time are the only two magazines we have found with the large circulations throughout the world that assume the attitude of supreme supremacy in an intellectual sense, and certainly they are the only two magazines which take the attitude that what opinion they have of anything or anybody should be accepted as being the ultra of something or other. Yet recently, in the month of November, It violated all of the promises and statements made when the magazine was started, to refrain from bombastic exposures and ridiculous articles for the sake of circulation, and attempted to put forward a very personal idea of someone's that California was filled with nothing but that which would be called the essence of cuckoo land. It reminded me of the statement made some years ago by a New York magazine to the effect that there were more insane people in California than in any other state in the United States. But the newspaper did not back up this truthful statement with the further explanation that most of the insane people in California, if not 95% of them, came from other states because of their mental condition, and hoped to find improvement, and often did find improvement because of the climate, beauty, and other salubrious conditions here in California. The statement made by the newspaper was as absurd as one that could be made by any magazine or any newspaper, saying that there are more victims of tuberculosis to be found in Arizona than in any other state in the country, because 99% of the victims of tuberculosis living in Arizona at the present time, and given it such a large population of such victims, have come from other states in order to be relieved of their physical condition because of the climatic conditions in Arizona. And the same thing can be said about California in regard to fanaticism. While I am not attempting to defend the city of Los Angeles or the city of Hollywood or the southern part of the state, I can say, judging from the correspondence we receive, that every sort of fanatic in art, music, philosophy, science, scenic work, electrical work, or other industry or trade who lives in any part of the United States or even parts of Europe hopes to come to California and expects to come to California someday and carry on his fanatical trade, work, philosophy, or activities. There are two very definite reasons for this. First, because this state of California is the last to be affected by general economical conditions throughout the country. Secondly, because there are many wealthy individuals living here in the state who, because of the climate and the easygoing, interesting way of living, are easily and often misled into patronizing some of these forms of fanaticism merely as a pastime or a form of amusement. I think that the last time I visited the famous Coney Island in the New York district, I felt that some smarter, insincere reporter for some magazine or newspaper might publish an article claiming that Coney Island and its environment was the utmost of absolute insanity and representative of the most gullible, thoughtless, absurd type of individuals to be found anywhere in the world. But then I realized that the real truth was covered up in the fact that most of the people who went to Coney Island to spend a day or night and indulged in all the ridiculous, absurd pretensions, deceptive propositions, and fanatical indulgences went there not because they were unable to determine the real from the false, or unable to determine that they were being deceived, but because they liked to patronize these things as a pastime and looked upon them as an innocent indulgence, which they could afford and which did not materially affect them in any particular way. And so we have in various parts of California many things that are typical of the carnivals, circuses, Coney Islands, and midways of state fairs. And these exist here not because the people of this state are imbeciles and simple-minded, but because the people of this state enjoy life and like to indulge in these frothy things more as a pastime and an amusement than anything else. And so the pretenders, the charlatans, and anyone else with a bag of tricks from all parts of America love to come to California for a year or two and receive some of the patronage, not only of the natives of this state, but of the thousands of tourists who come here from their own state, sane and rational cities and towns, to have a fling at the many peculiar things to be found in California. But this situation does not make the whole of the state ridiculous and absurd. Certainly, many of the Hollywood producers are representatives of false fronts and artificial settings which are far from the truth. But the persons who patronize these things as they are shown all over the world in motion pictures know that they are not true, and love to be deceived because of the amusement connected with them. Just as millions of people still go to patronize the performances of a magician, and the more successful a magician is in deceiving his audience and in tricking them, the more the persons patronize him and pay for their amusement. They want to be fooled. They want to be deceived, while at the same time they want to be entertained. But Life, as a magazine, took the superior attitude of creating and giving the impression that California was just filled with fanatics, and that the AMORC, or the Rosicrucian Order, was part of this fanaticism, representing the cuckoo land of America. And then, in its gross ignorance, it went to say that the AMORC order was non-communicative, that its philosophy was obscure and unknown, and that its principal temple, a little outdoor ornament at Rosicrucian Park which could not seat more than 20 or 30 persons, was located in San Jose in Southern California, in the very center of all the peculiar things that typified cuckoo land. The editors did not even spell the name of the order correctly, and were not even versed well enough in geography and history of California to know that San Jose is not in the southern part of the state, and common sense would have told them that the little ornament they pictured in their magazine was not a temple, since it had no roof on it and was too small to seat more than a handful of persons, and therefore could not be the main building of an organization our size. But such is the ignorance of a magazine that attempts to inform the American people of everything that is true and honest and great through the superiority of its editorial intellect. When the magazine Life first started, it claimed it would not indulge in all sorts of exposures and bombastic articles that would merely attract attention and create circulation for the time being, but that it would be an honest and sincere reporter of the great news events of America and the rest of the world. To read through its recent issues as compared with those editorial statements in its first issues is to discover how far the magazine has wandered editorially from its original purpose, and while thousands of its readers and subscribers are feeling now that they have been defrauded of what they originally subscribed for and what they really expected in a magazine, of the supposed integrity and scope of both Life and Time. Thousands of our members have written to us protesting at what Life magazine has said, and evidently many of them have written to the editors of Life also. But we shall see now whether in the issues during December and January, the sincere and honest weekly magazine makes any acknowledgement of its errors and attempt to correct the fallacies of its editorial staff. That would be one way of showing its sincerity and the desire to correct any mistakes of its purely human equation. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.